In 1999, he was everywhere. A blockbuster action hero, a comedy star, the kind of face that was on every poster, in every theater. The leading man studios built entire films around. He had the rugged looks, the easy charm, the box office numbers, everything Hollywood says it wants. And then, he disappeared. No scandal that made sense, no arrest, no public meltdown. He simply faded out of the spotlight for nearly a decade, to the point where, years later, people were typing his name into search engines, asking the same quiet question. Whatever happened to that guy? The answer is one of the most human stories in modern Hollywood, and it has one of the best endings you will ever hear. Because his disappearance wasn't one dramatic event, it was 4 quiet ones, stacked on top of each other, each one pulling him a little further from the life he'd built. And the 4th reason, the one almost nobody knew about for years, is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. So stick with me, because once you understand all 4, you'll never see his comeback the same way again. First, let's set the stage, because you can't understand how far someone falls without seeing how high they climbed. Around the turn of the millennium, he was one of the most bankable leading men on the planet. He headlined a monster adventure franchise that became a global phenomenon, the kind that fills theaters in every country and spawned sequels for years. He could carry a special effects spectacle and a goofy family comedy in the very same year, and audiences showed up for both. He was even part of the ensemble of a film that went on to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. If you were alive and watching movies back then, you didn't just know his name. You'd grown up on his movies. So how does a man standing at that altitude simply vanish from the industry that adored him? Reason 1. His own body gave out. The action roles that made him famous were physical, demanding, punishing work. And by his own account, he insisted on doing a great deal of it himself. The stunts, the falls, the long days on set are taking a toll. For a while, that's exactly what made him special. He felt real on screen because he was really doing it. But the human body keeps score. Over the years, he's spoken openly about what that toll became. A string of injuries and, reportedly, multiple surgeries over a relatively short stretch of time. The very thing that built his stardom slowly, quietly, started taking it away. Now here's something most people never connect. Reason 2 had nothing to do with him at all. While his body was wearing down, the industry itself was shifting underneath his feet. The kind of movie that made him a star, the mid-budget, practical, star-driven adventure film, was quietly going extinct. Hollywood was pivoting hard toward a different model. Massive interconnected universes. Comic book franchises. Films built around brands instead of faces. And almost overnight, the exact lane he owned, the one he was the best in the world at, closed. He didn't get worse at his job. The job he was best at just stopped being made. Reason 3 is the most human of all. And because he's spoken about it himself, we can talk about it gently. In roughly the same window of years, life arrived all at once, the way it sometimes does. A marriage ended. He lost his mother. There were private battles and personal weights that never made a single headline, but quietly pulled a person out of public life. He stepped back, partly by choice, partly because circumstance left him little choice, and the industry, with its famously short memory, moved on to the next bright young face. The posters changed. The phone stopped ringing. And then there is reason 4. The one that, for years, almost nobody knew about. In an interview in 2018, he spoke publicly for the first time about an incident he said took place at an industry event back in 2003, an experience he described as an assault. He has said it left him feeling deeply ashamed, anxious, and withdrawn, and that it played a real part in why he pulled away from Hollywood and stopped being seen. The person he described disputed his account. "I'm not going to sensationalize any of it. He told that story carefully and bravely, and I'm going to respect that. But the larger truth inside it is something worth sitting with. Sometimes a career doesn't end with a bang, or a scandal, or a single bad decision. Sometimes it ends with someone quietly deciding that the room they used to walk into so easily no longer feels safe." And this is exactly where the story turns. Because here's the thing, the entire industry somehow missed. The audience never stopped loving him. Hollywood stopped calling, but the people never did. For years, fans kept his name alive online. They traded clips of his old movies. They wrote again and again about how genuinely kind he had always seemed, on every set, to everyone. They built, quite literally, a grassroots movement to bring him back. They even gave it a name, calling for his renaissance before a single comeback role had been announced. It was one of those rare moments where the public decided, together, that a good man deserved a second chance. And slowly, that affection started to matter. The door cracked open. A warmly received role on a television series reminded the industry of his range, his warmth, the very things that made people love him in the first place. The goodwill that had been quietly pooling online began showing up in his actual career. Casting directors noticed, directors noticed, and then came the role that changed everything. It was a small film, a demanding, deeply human, emotionally raw performance, the kind that asks an actor to set down every shield he owns and be vulnerable. The exact opposite of an action hero. When it premiered at a major international film festival, the audience didn't just applaud politely and file out. They rose to their feet. The ovation went on and on. Several minutes of a packed theater standing for him, and the cameras caught him standing there, overwhelmed, tears in his eyes, hand over his heart, watching a room full of strangers tell him something he hadn't felt in nearly 20 years. "We see you. We're glad you came back." And months later, he walked onto the most important stage in his entire profession and won its highest honor, the Academy Award for Best Actor. The guy everyone forgot. The guy who disappeared. He had just completed one of the most beloved comebacks in the history of film. And this is why his story matters, even if you've never thought about Hollywood for a single day in your life. Because the lesson underneath it belongs to all of us. Disappearing is not the same as failing. Sometimes stepping away from the spotlight isn't weakness, it's survival. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is go quiet, protect what's left of themselves, and wait. And the people who genuinely care about you, they don't forget you the moment you stop performing. They wait, too. They wait for you to be ready. He spent the better part of a decade convinced his best days were behind him, that the door had closed for good. It hadn't closed. It was never the end. It was only an intermission. Now, his story is the story of a man the whole world counted out, who somehow climbed all the way back. But the next one I want to tell you is the exact opposite. It's about a man who had everything, reportedly $650 million, an island, a fleet of cars, a fortune most people couldn't spend in 10 lifetimes, and who lost all of it in just a few short years. How does that even happen? That story is waiting for you right here. Watch it next.